I'm joined today by Kim Isherwood. How you doing, Kim?
Hiya, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
No problem. Do you want to explain, your backgrounds, just for everyone who might not know you?
Yeah, so I'm Kim. I'm chair of an organisation called Public Child Protection Wales. I'm highly qualified in, I'm a criminologist, I've got degrees in social policy and things like that. Highly trained in child sex abuse, exploitation, harmful sexual behaviour, all the dark things that nobody likes to discuss, the things people like to pretend is not happening. I'm in the thick of it. So that's pretty much me.
One of the worst aspects of human society, frankly.
Yes.
Having to deal with that. We cover stories like this a lot in regards to grooming or child sexual abuse and whatnot. As someone who deals with this a lot, how do you stop yourself from just getting utterly depressed by the subject?
Right, so you have to desensitize yourself. What I used to do is 10 weeks on, 4 weeks off. Since I've been dealing with the new work I'm doing now, I haven't been able to have that 4 weeks off. So I actually did get ill. I got really ill because you can actually suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder from this kind of work. So it's all about desensitizing. You have to desensitize. For me, it's a personal thing. I saw people who had suffered, at the hands of this kind of crime. I was 18 at the time. They were 15. They had no teeth in their head. They were cutting up. So for me, it was always, how can I help? And the only way you can help is by taking it from the inside. So for me, I always thought if I can get this information, bring it back and do something with it, So for me, it's always been about desensitization. You can't just go into it. There is no way you can go into it. I think I'm fine. I think I'm great. I always set myself the bar, like if I could interview a paedophile, that's what I've always tried to aim for. And but there'll always be something that will come along. I read the sentencing remarks and things like that to get details. And there will always be something, every so often, something will come up and it'll really, it'll wind me. It'll really wind me.
Some story of a girl who's been through hell again, and you just think...
That's it. Right, so reading these horrific things happening to the children, that is really bad, yes. But you know what I find even worse? I find it worse reading it from the offender's perspective. The sexual acts that they force these children to engage in are something I would only do when I am fully in love and in this consensual relationship and when I'm really, really with someone. And when you're reading what should be special being forced onto a child, it's shocking. I can't put a word on it really. You're not human if it doesn't affect you.
If you're not human read what they've done.
Yeah. You're not human if it doesn't affect you. But it does take time. It does take practice. And you have got to be passionate about it. Or what you'll find is people don't want to talk about it because it's so taboo. So this is why people get away with so much. Nobody wants to talk about it. But I'll talk about it like the weather. I'll talk about it all day long. So I'm the crazy woman up the street that talks about this stuff.
I suppose that leads us into just the first link here, just to set it up, which is just how you see here. This is an article from Manchester Evening News saying how the long shadow of grooming gang allegations changed Oldham's politics and took down 2 leaders. And they detail in here about how the report has come out about Oldham's grooming gang, another one. I mean, I don't know how many there's been in the UK, frankly.
Can I just say something before we go further on the issue of grooming gangs? So I'm a criminologist. So I graduated my degree 2017 and I've just done my master's now. I remember back in 2015, bearing in mind I've been doing a lot of work in child sex abuse, institutional abuse is my thing. I remember going back, I think it's about 2015, and I had never learnt about this. And I remember being on social media.
Really?
Yeah,
Even
honestly. And I remember being on social media. It had come out in the news about the grooming gangs, but I was being told that it was a long issue. It's been going on for decades and I wouldn't believe it. No way would I believe it. But I'm one of those people, if you give me something to look at, I'm going to look at it. So I was directed to a book called Easy Meat, and I cross-referenced everything in there, and I was absolutely amazed at how long this has been going on. And there has been convictions going back to 1987, mind, from the south of England and everything. So I really wanted to mention that to you, because the fact that I've done this work for such a long time and I stood there arguing that this does not go on, it was like a one-off kind of thing. That's the
the mentality you
Yeah.
were faced with.
Yeah. You know, and so I have to say that because I wanted to say that because I was one of those people that didn't believe this was a huge problem when I should have known about it.
Even
I
that
should have
environment.
known about it. I should have known about the in-depth details. I should have been studying them, but they wasn't available to us, you know. So I thought it was like a one-off or something that's just come about, you know. So I just wanted to mention that because I'm supposed to know about this stuff, and if I didn't know about it,
I mean,
then that's food for thought, isn't it?
I mean, it's a real interesting aspect of where we live. I mean, just as a country, because these, small scandals will come out in the United States or whatever, and the details get widely shared. I mean, the scale of what has happened in the UK with regards to that kind of stuff that's gone on for decades, and the repression of that conversation. I mean, the fact that that happened, to the extent that even someone working in this industry, dealing with these kind of cases, didn't know about the extent of it.
But what I found really interesting was these things were reported in the media, but only in the local rag. So if you go to the Book Easy Meet, you'll see it's
That's
only...
why I had to go to the Manchester Evening
it's
Paper for
only
it.
in the local rag. And like if I'm talking back, going as far back as 1997, it would have been a printed paper. So the chances of the next town knowing about it is zilch anyway, you know. But that's what I picked up on. It was only ever recorded in local rags, and it started at the south of England.
I mean, you're so right though, because you very rarely, if ever, find it on the, even now with the internet age, on the front page of the BBC. Whereas whenever I do a story about it, I do actually notice I always have to go to the local ones.
Yeah.
Do you think that's purposeful? Or
Yeah, of course it is, because it's a way of controlling the information and creating a border around it then. It kind of, we see in this with everything that's going on now, but it kind of isolates it.
I can certainly
It's
see
like
it.
you're showing the locals that you're dealing with there, but you're also keeping the problem hidden from the rest of the population.
So there's no pressure from outside to
No.
actually do much. But anyway, so this newest story here is that a new report was released. I believe we went through some of it, and it was pretty horrific, but just cliff notes here that they write down, saying the appalling findings of a review into cases of child sexual exploitation in Oldham have been revealed for the first time this week, yet the political ramifications have already been far-reaching, contributing to the dethroning of 2 council leaders in successive years. The review, carried out by experts Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway, found that vulnerable children have been failed despite efforts to protect them between 2011 and 2014. And that's just in that small period there. Of course, this problem goes on much longer than just a couple of years. A specific case dating back to 2005, funnily enough, involving Sophie, a 12-year-old girl was repeatedly raped, is singled out for intense criticism of the way the authorities dealt with the investigation into her assaults by strangers, and for the failure to take action when she was being groomed online. I don't know if you're aware, but the worst aspect of that we read was she was sexually assaulted, or assaulted. The reports differ depending on which outlet you're reading. She turned up in the police station and said, help me, this happened to me. The police told her, come back when you're less drunk. I don't know if she was drunk, but a strange response when she was saying that there's someone trying to rape her. Car turned up, Muslim man. They put her in the car. The chap was then later played in 3 Girls, that series.
Right.
Because he was a prolific rapist and trafficker. And, got in the car, raped her multiple times. It's just like, okay, thanks, police. Like, you literally handed over the girl who was saying, she's a threat to the rapist.
They should have just taken her in. 12 years of age as well. Look.
Even if she's drunk, okay, we'll shove her on a cell
12 years of age. Look, when we're looking at this with children, the law is kind of, it's split in many ways. When we're looking at children, we know age 13 and under is statutory rape. So anyone under that age should never have walked up to that police station. You know, it's rape anyway, anyone under 16 as far as I'm concerned. But when you're looking at anyone 13 and under, that is a massive, massive failure. That's a huge failure. The police should have been diving in there. They should have had the specialist team with her and everything. That's absolutely disgusting. The fact that she was 12 is even worse.
I mean, the only defense I've seen, just from the comments last time we covered it, was someone who said they were an ex-police officer who said that, well, because she was drunk, it's standard procedure if someone's drunk to send them away so they get them back. And I was just like, no way. Even in that case, you would have just said, okay, we'll just put her in a cell, wait till she's sober, then we go through it again.
Yeah.
Even if you're concerned that
that girl was walking forensics.
Yeah.
That girl was walking forensics. She was walking evidence. She should have been preserved.
So that they could find out what happened, but
preserved.
They weren't interested.
They can even get DNA from touch if somebody touches you, So she should have been totally preserved,
Just to find out, what's happened.
Yeah.
So they continue in here. Speaking at the publication of the report, Oldham Council leader Amanda Chatterton said, "On behalf of Oldham Council, I want to apologise to all the victims of child sexual exploitation that are referenced in this report. What happened to Sophie is absolutely indefensible. I read that report and I'm sure, like everyone else, I was horrified. She wasn't protected by the police and the council as a 12-year-old. But then to reinforce that trauma as an adult as well is absolutely appalling. I want to apologise wholeheartedly for that." So, in Sophie's case, both Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council were said to be more concerned with their reputations and, quote, covering up their failures than acknowledging the harm done to the young girl. And unfortunately, this is not even a shock.
Something we see happening over and over again.
It's like finding out that local politician embezzles money. I mean, in this country, this is just completely normal. Which,
it is. It is becoming normal, especially in the larger cities. Like I said, I argued against this when it first came in mainstream media. I argued that it wasn't on this grand scale. It is on this grand scale. And again, this has been happening. The councils are to blame, the police forces. And there's a pattern as well. They seem to be Labour-led councils.
Almost every time.
Almost every time they seem to be Labour-led councils. And I wouldn't just say that. I've looked.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it just happens to be the two council leaders who lost their positions, both Labour. Don't know why. Anyway, so they say in here, however, when assessing the claims about a widespread cover-up of abuse in the borough, the review teams claimed that there was no evidence to support that, except the evidence that they were covering up their failures, which isn't a cover-up, because I don't know who thought that through. That statement was like, yes, well, the police and the council were covering up their failures to not embarrass themselves, but there was no cover-up. Like, do you listen to yourself before you speak? Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, but it's not right. So it's bad enough the information's coming from them, right? But who are we to just accept it? We accept
nobody
that.
Trusts them either.
But the vast majority of the population are reading that and accepting that.
Well, just that there was no cover-up, don't worry about it.
There was a cover-up, there wasn't cover-up. And people will just read that and carry on as normal.
Well, maybe not. We'll get to the footage in a minute, at least the locals, which don't seem to be doing that. But they say, in fact, the jury stated, quote, "We have concluded that we have been provided with no evidence, either through our interviews or documentary review, to suggest that senior managers or councillors sought to cover up the existence of child sexual exploitation in Oldham or the complexity involved in tackling the perpetrators. We always followed where the evidence took us, we don't make our conclusions lightly, and we are absolutely confident that the allegation that senior politicians were covering up both the existence of child sexual exploitation and the complexity of tackling it, that there is no basis for that allegation." Funny thing there, I actually happen to remember when we first covered this. They did say that, though, because they said that the politicians and the police didn't want to investigate shisha bars because the far right were making up claims that Muslim men were involved in this, so they just didn't want to investigate the shisha bars and own up to the reality that there is a connection there.
What's going on?
Shisha bars, beautiful British institution. The delay at the start of the new year meant that long-promised findings of the review were not made public before the May local elections, and the allegations of a cover-up would continue to dominate the debates. This included the production of leaflets branded misogynistic and racist by Labour, of course, because, they're anti-Labour, so of course they are, which were seen being delivered by opposition candidates in crucial wards. These leaflets included the claim that Miss Shah had played a disgraceful role in the cover-up of child abuse, which is a racist statement because she's brown, therefore we can't say that she's done anything wrong, presumably.
Yeah.
Or you are racist. Shah happened to lose her seat to a Conservative who was campaigning on this basis as well. So that's interesting. And then this, you would think, is somewhat of a conclusion of the story. I mean, this is typical for what we usually see, or at least from what my wheelhouse I see. Report comes out, they get told nothing happened, don't worry about it. And then everyone just sort of moves on. And then another one happens, and so forth. Not so much in this case, it seems. So this is Inaya posting here from GB News. A group of protesters boo and shout shame on you to Andy Burnham at the first public meeting held on the evening of June 27th. Since the release of the damning Grooming Report, many protesters held up signs saying cover up written on them as well.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
So let's enjoy a flavour of the state of debate.
For the testimony to be given, and I'm answering that directly because I want that to be known from my point of view. That wasn't the
You
question.
were there and you haven't answered the question.
That wasn't the question, Andy.
You have not answered the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, we take...
Elaine, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about, love. You don't know what you're talking about.
There was more than that, obviously. That
was this week.
that was yesterday.
Oh, right.
So right up until midnight, they had this debate going, talking about this, and there were councillors asking questions, of course. But all the locals who turned up were pretty pissed with, well, everyone involved and
Well,
also their responses.
I would be too. I think this is the first time they've had the opportunity to do something like this, is it? Because I've never seen anything like this before where the public can speak to the councillors about what's going on in the area.
I mean, just directly turning up to the meeting and being like, we hate you. What you've done is terrible.
Yeah.
We don't trust any of you. Any of your report either. We're not even trust that.
I'm showing the signs.
So there was also, as you can see here, there was a prayer before they start the council meeting, and all of the protesters who turned up, all the public, turned their backs and just had the sign saying "cover up" as well to make it clear about their opinion on the whole group of people there. Which, to be honest, I'm happy to finally see something, even something as small as it's a council meeting and disturbing it, but to have the politicians face.
I'm
people who have to
actually
deal with it.
surprised. I'm actually surprised they had that kind of meeting, because that's one complaint that we've had, that we don't get the opportunity to do things like this. So I'm quite impressed with that, to be honest with you.
I did read that they tried to have this before and they had to call the police, and the police
What do you
removed them.
expect? What do you expect? They are living in areas where these girls are suffering. The boys too. There's boys involved in this as well, mind, but people don't mention the boys. And there's, we know it's hundreds of thousands of children. We know it's gone on for decades. So what do they expect?
No, they expect everyone to
be
just
angry.
move on.
I expect everyone to be like that.
Yeah,
I'm wondering why they're not.
I mean, you hope it's just because people don't know.
Yeah,
And
that's a lot to do with it. People don't know, and I'm proof of that.
and the repression, as you say, the fact that you try and contain
keep it,
the whole thing. But anyway, so if you go to the next one here, there is actually some local who was just tweeting out some of the goings on in this meeting. Some of it is just I mean, it cripples me that we still have this conversation this far on about what we should do, but it happens again. And as you can see here, this Conservative candidate here who called the whole thing a whitewash, just wasn't even interested in the report that was released. Just like, no, you haven't looked into it properly. We think you're BSing. I don't know the details fully, but that's the position there, which is from the protesters and the Conservative councillors, that you guys are, again, trying to cover up stuff. And if you go to the next one here, you can see the response from everyone in the room. I should have clipped this, but if you could just play it for 5 seconds, because it's only 5 seconds long. There, John. So, yeah, but that was just, he called it a whitewash, and they're just banging on the tables. Being like, yep, totally in agreement.
Well, we know it's going to be a whitewash when there's no convictions, there's no accountability. Because that's what we want, is accountability. And when there is no accountability, you know it's a whitewash.
I mean, because one of the things...
You don't even have to read it.
You get... Because for every case I've seen, there's hundreds of suspects in a given town.
Yes, yeah.
And you might, if you're lucky, get 7 guys convicted. You're like, okay, well, that's pathetic. But then the following question turns up, which is, okay, you convict the rapist, sure, usually don't end up getting rape charges, but at least they get convicted of something. But then there's also all the officials that were involved in this, because remember, as you say, a decades-long process.
Yeah.
People knew. I mean, officials knew. People in those circumstances.
People in positions of trust.
Yeah. And
there's a new law out now. It's the Emergency Services Act, I think is called. And if you assault anyone, an emergency service worker, which includes prison officers as well, you'll get double the time. So why aren't these people getting double the time for failing in their positions? They're in positions of power and positions of trust. And if they have failed, they should get double the time.
I mean, they certainly should be on some kind of list that doesn't allow them to be in this kind of work ever again.
No.
If not. But if you go to the next one here, there's an individual, one of the councillors, who definitely agrees, just started calling for the arrest and imprisonment of the officials involved who covered it up or turned a blind eye or anything. It's just like, okay, fair point, frankly. I'm definitely at that point where, if there are councillors who didn't care or tried to turn it down. I mean, who were the individual councillors and politicians who said, I don't believe the shisha bar thing? That's a far-right narrative.
Exactly. They should all be held accountable. If something like this happened to children on my watch, I would go to prison for it.
I mean, it's gross negligence at the minimum, if not. But there you have it. And what was the Labour Party response in all of this debate? Can you guess?
Oh, I don't know. Do I want to know?
There's a councillor here who said she doesn't support another review into the whole thing. I think we'll just let it die here. Don't you know? We've done enough looking, methinks. It's like, okay, great.
I did read a report, a tweet from a Labour politician who said the victims of grooming gangs need to shut their mouths for the sake of diversity.
That's Naz Shah.
Yeah.
Do you know the whole story of that?
No, I don't.
So she's a Labour MP. She liked and retweeted Owen Jones, saying that was a parody account. And then she was like, oh, it was an accident I did this. I thought it said something else. I was like,
no.
What did you think it said? So then Sarah Champion spoke out and said this is a problem. She was women's minister, so, women's issue. Women being raped, you would have thought.
Yeah.
She lost her job because of that. And then they made Naz Shah women's minister in the Labour Party. The lady who said they should shut up for the sake of diversity was made women's minister.
You couldn't write it, could you?
No, it is like a comedy sketch.
Do they get promotions for this kind of behaviour then? I think they do.
Well, she directly did.
Yeah.
So there you have it. I think she was since been put in charge of like community cohesion or something equally hilarious to give them. I mean, it's like giving a serial, arsonist, putting him in charge of the fire brigade.
Yeah.
It's just it's unbelievable. But there you have it. There's the local news there from what I could see. And this just happened yesterday, and they went till midnight talking. So, I mean, this is about as much as the information we have there. I'd love to see what does blow up out of this. I mean, those individuals there weren't a small number of people who were, pissed off, rightfully. And I'd like to see how that grows. But I thought we'd end this off just with one more story, which is, typical. Again, I really hate this, but this is to do with the fact that we can't actually get rid of these people either. The foreign rapists, those with dual citizenship. Ringleader of Rochdale grooming gang won't be deported to Pakistan because of a loophole that let him renounce his citizenship of his native country just 5 days before the key hearing.
That's wrong, isn't it?
It's so pathetic. I mean,
I find these loopholes. Why are the loopholes there for criminals?
I don't know what this. I don't even know how this can possibly be a loophole. I mean, surely if someone's like, you won't send me to Pakistan, I renounce my citizenship, you could say, no, you're clearly taking the piss.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't believe you. Like, surely that would be the response. But they say in here, Abdulaziz, beautiful British name, known as the Master by his fellow abusers, was stripped of his UK citizenship in 2018 after using human rights laws in a bid to avoid being thrown out of the country. But while fellow gang members, Adil Khan and Qadi Abdul Rauf, are still fighting efforts to send them back to Pakistan, the status of Aziz has been shrouded in secrecy. I remember talking about this, because you remember, I don't know if you do, but Aziz walked into one of the girls he abused, because he's been released from prison.
Has he?
So he walked into Asda, she walked into Asda, they locked eyes, and then she had a breakdown.
I do know one of them was pregnant, and they were trying to make her give the rapist access to the child as part of his human rights.
Don't you know paedophiles have a right to children? Oh, God. Oh, wow. They say in here, the 51-year-old taxi driver, well, I suppose former taxi driver, unless he's still doing it, who ferried victims to sex parties as far away as Leeds and Bradford, was convicted of trafficking and conspiracy to engage in sexual activity with a child and jailed for 9 years in 2012. But yesterday, to the outrage of campaigners, it was revealed that, in reality, Aziz actually won his fight to stay in the UK almost 4 years ago. And the Home Office just wouldn't tell anyone because, well, it made them look bad.
Well, surely his victims have a right to know for a start, don't they? If anybody should be informed, it should have been his victims. And then, obviously, they could have gone to the media, whatever. But his victims, at the very least, should have been informed of that.
They weren't, which is why one of the victims ran into him in Asda and then was like, what the hell is he doing here? He should have been deported. And the Home Office just didn't respond. I remember we covered it quite a lot. And this turns out to be the reason why. They basically just accepted that, well, he's renounced Pakistani citizenship. Very
just
sincerely.
Like that. He's just got the power to do it like that.
They say the truth was revealed when a barrister representing Ralph in his battle against deportation read out a document which she said then Home Secretary Sajid Javid wrote to Aziz on Halloween in 2018. It revealed that Aziz renounced his Pakistani citizenship in July 13th, 2018, 5 days before the hearing, before a court of appeal, where he, Ralph, and Khan lost their battle against being stripped of British nationality. So the other two also have renounced their Pakistani citizenship after they figured out that you could do that. But they did it too late, so it seems that Aziz did it just soon enough that there now is no legal way of getting rid of him. He's allowed to stay here.
It's wrong. They shouldn't just be allowed to do that, should they?
No. I mean, it's obviously insincere.
Yeah.
There is
And how can they say it's a loophole? How can that even exist?
I suppose it exists that you can renounce your citizenship, and therefore you can't deprive him of the one he's got. But we could also just refuse to accept this.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously insincere and just speak to the Pakistanis.
If that's the loophole, then obviously he needs to lose some of his some of his freedom.
Yeah.
Because he needs to be under supervision. He's a dangerous man, and if they can't send him out of the country, there needs to be some way to monitor him all the time.
I have also just find it strange how these three guys in particular were desperate not to go to Pakistan, and I'm just like,
why were they desperate not to go there? What have they done there?
But it's also just because in Pakistan this is more accepted, because this is part of the problem, obviously.
Yeah, well, if it's more accepted in Pakistan, why are they too scared to go there? This is
what
what
are
I
they waiting
mean.
for?
So if they are too scared to go back to Pakistan, what is the real reason?
I mean, I think maybe they just want to remain here and carry
Yeah.
on doing what they were doing. They're enjoying it.
Well, just like the book says, easy meat.
Yeah. Which everyone should check out, by the way. Peter McLaughlin, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great guy. But in here they say, as a result, the Home Secretary has decided not to make deprivation order in respect to you. The letter went on, meaning Aziz retained his British citizenship and still does to this day, and will stay with us forever in this country until his dying days. Thank God that we took him seriously. You know, he's a very sincere man, renouncing his Pakistani citizenship, just can't go back. The Home Office last night failed to deny that Aziz was therefore no longer facing deportation. So they're still denying it. If you actually write to the Home Office, they just won't tell you. Presumably the victims also, if they write to the Home Office, just won't be told.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows now, thanks to a leak, essentially, from one of his other buddies who was in court and got read out that letter. But in response to the anger over delays, the Home Office has said that foreign criminals should be in no doubt of our determination to deport them. A whole zero determination. I mean, literally none. I mean, you've got three guys who are convicted of raping kids. They've got dual citizenship. You know, easiest job in the world. Okay, you don't even have to keep them in the UK forever and deal with them like they're homegrown criminals. You can deport them to Pakistan. You can't even do that. I mean, you couldn't have been given like an easier case if you were the government to get rid of a foreign rapist. Couldn't even do that.
And the thing is, if the government can't show responsibility, then why should we trust them anyway? They'd obviously... is there any cases where they've deported anyone? Because I haven't heard of one.
You hear the occasional flight, and then it gets stopped by, some Greenpeace activists who turn up, insisting that this...
I've never heard of
murderer shouldn't be
anyone
sent back to
being
Jamaica.
deported back to their country for harming our children, not once. That's why I asked if you knew. But
I happen to know the figures are pathetic. So, in Douglas Murray's book, The Strange Death of Europe, he notes that on Theresa May, there was an effort to try and get rid of people who had just immigrated here illegally. As a scale of a crime, child rape seems more prescient to get rid of than the illegal immigrant, right? But even in those cases, it was like 5% or something pathetic were actually sent back. The rest of them just disappeared.
convictions for child sex abuse is at 1%.
I said terrible everywhere.
It's
I was
at 1%.
unable to do the most basic
But I
things.
actually carry a conviction list on me, and I think it's 31 pages long. So considering it's at 1%, this conviction list is for counsellors, so that means there's school governors. There's been children's ministers, but it's mostly counsellors and mayors on this 31-page conviction list that we carry.
It is certainly true that people
And
do get
like I
involved
keep
in
saying,
this
that's
for
less
that.
than 1% of the convictions, but these people are still in their jobs.
They say in here at one point, I didn't write it down, but they say that the counsellors respond by saying no one would ever get into a position like this to try and further child sexual abuse. And it's like, yeah, they would. Don't give me that. Of course they would. What kind of pedo wants to get into a position of power? All of them.
All of them, yeah.
Anyway, but they say in here, Khan and Ralph also renounced their Pakistani citizenship. However, these applications were signed off 2 months later than Aziz's application, the tribunal has heard. Khan previously told the tribunal that he shouldn't be deported back to Pakistan, as he is a role model for his teenage son, and needed to teach his teenager right from wrong.
Is that a joke?
No, that is a genuine quote from the court. The court responded by saying he's not a role model, obviously, because he's a nonce. So, but it's just... And the third guy there. So you've got the three guys. The third guy just quoted as showing no what do you call it? No repentance for anything he done. His second guy is saying that, well, actually, I'm a role model. He thinks he's even higher because he's done this, presumably. And you got the third guy who renounced his citizenship in time to stay here forever, and we're never going to get rid of him. I mean, this country is screwed.
It is unbelievably screwed, and it always seems to be around the children.
Simplest things. You mean
Everything, all our failings seem to be around the children. We're damaging our entire population.
It's probably bad to quote Putin at this time, but he did have a good quote on this once, unfortunately, which is that he said, "A country that fails to defend its own children, it has no future at all."
Yeah, that's true. I agree with him.
In that respect, even he gets the point better than the British justice system, which literally worse than Putin.
There has been reports that written by, now I don't even like this place myself, the United Nations, I'm going back years now. They have written reports and they've asked the question in Parliament, why do you hate the children so much? Because our policies have always reflected terrible risks. Terrible risks. We have never, ever been a leading country in child protection, not once. In the entire history. We're supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world, advanced, and we can't even look after the children.
Yeah, and in this case, it can't even do the most basic things of getting rid of a rapist who's a foreigner.
Thank you for watching that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed that, you can sign up to become a member on our website and access our premium content. For instance, this recent Epochs from Carl and Bo, where they talk about Alfred the Great. If you're interested in following us on social media, you can find us on Getter at lotuseaters_com. Thank you and goodbye.